Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Steven. This is Northwest Small Batch Brewing, and today I'm doing something I've never done before. I am going to make a rye beer. Here's the thing, rye beers to me sound like something that, I don't really want to drink. For some reason in my brain, I've never had a rye beer, but it sounds like something I'm not gonna like. So I need to make one so I can find out what it's all about. What does it really taste like? I happen to know somebody who's kind of an expert on making rye beer, Mr. Matt Jaggers over at Jaggers Brewing Co. I'll put a link to his channel up here in the corner. He really does make pretty much all rye beer. I mean, he does some other stuff, but I mean, of all the people I can think of, if you're looking to make rye beer, that's your guy. So I talked to him, and he has a recipe on, his channel for a Roggenbier. What's a Roggenbier? Well, Roggenbier is basically it's like a Hefeweizen, but instead of wheat, you use rye. Now, I'm going to make some personal changes to his recipe, but not much. So here's the deal. His recipe uses Pilsner. I'm not a fan of Pilsner. Just a personal thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the flavor or something. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Pilsner. So I'm nixing the Pilsner in this recipe. And I'm just going to up the Maris Otter that's in it and the rye. So he had 48% rye. I'm going with 60% rye malt in mine, which could be a huge disaster. We'll find out. He used, I think, 24% Maris Otter, pale malt, right? I'm using 32% Maris Otter malt in mine. So that's kind of my base grain. And then he used 2% each of Carafa, and Crystal 120. I am going to use the same, but I'm going to use 39. Oh, crap. That would be a mess, wouldn't it? 3% Crystal 120. And I'm just using Breeze. I have some left over here. And then I'm going to use, where are we at? 5% Carafa Type 1, which is like this real dark malt here. All right. So that's my malt bill. It's not huge. I tell you what, let's get started. I'm going to head over to the kitchen and start milling the grain. Let's go. Tossed all that grain in the mill, ran it through the mill on the tightest setting, and then I dumped it back into the mill and ran it a second time through the mill on that same tight setting to get a nice fine mill. I didn't put it in the recipe, but I also tossed in 5% of rolled oats, in this case, for mouthfeel and head retention. And I also tossed in 2 big handfuls of rice hulls. So I added water to the kettle, and then I set my strike water to my desired temperature. Okay, so I mashed in at 155 degrees. However, here's what happened. I've been having an issue for a while now with my PID for my claw hammer system. We'll see what happens, for the end result, but it's disappointing. Very disappointing. Okay, so the mash is done. I'm going to go ahead and start bringing it up to a boil. And while I'm doing that, it is time to, you guessed it, drain the main grain. So go ahead and drain the grain, bring it up to a boil. All right, so now that I'm up to a boil, it's time for the first hop addition. So this is a 60-minute hop addition, 0.8 ounces of Saaz hops, 3.5 alpha acid. Okay, it's time for the last hop addition here for the last 10 minutes of the boil. So this is 0.4 ounces of Saaz hops, 3.5 alpha acid. And yes, you will notice at the end that I dropped the whole damn thing in the pot because I had mixed the hops with a Whirlfloc tablet and some yeast nutrient, and I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to try to separate the hops for the hop spider. Oops, I did fish it out though. Alright, so it's time to transfer the beer to a fermenter. I'm using the All-Rounder, which has become my favorite fermenter now these days. And I'm just using gravity to do it. Sanitize your lid. Sanitize your dip tube. Stick on your floating dip tube if you have one, and strap on the lid. I want my yeast to grow up big and healthy, so I'm going to help it out by shaking the heck out of it for a few minutes so I can get some oxygen into the beer, and that will help with the yeast growth. There's a whole lot of shaking going on. All right, I'm ready to pitch the yeast. I am using Safale WB06, which is a wheat beer yeast, but generally what we're doing here is making a wheat beer, but we're using rye instead of wheat. 1 packet will do for a 5% beer.
One eternity later.
Well, we're here, everybody. We made it. I gotta tell you, pouring this beer, I've never seen a beer come out looking so viscous and thick. I actually thought this is not going to have any head retention. It's not going to have any carbonation. It looked like engine oil coming out of the tap. But lo and behold, it's got fantastic head retention. So what did we do? What was this? Like 1044 original gravity. 1008 is where it ended. So it ended a couple points higher, but that's fine. So we're looking at like 4.7%. It smells kind of acetaldehyde, if I'm gonna be honest, and it's thick as mud. I mean, you can't see through that. Holy cow. Can you tell from my face? That's it's not great. It's not great. Despite it being so viscous, and it actually the actual body, like the flavor, is kind of thin, and it's I guess it's, you know, like I said, I've never had a rye beer, so I guess it's the rye, but yeah, I'm not super happy with that. I don't know, but this is not going to convert me to rye beers, I will tell you that right now. It looks okay, but except for it looking like mud, like something came out of the Mississippi or something. And it's the same. So it's the same kind of flavor you get if you ever made a cider, like an apple cider, and it has that like new, like you know, apple, like green appley, unripe apple flavor. It's kind of what's happening in this, and it's got this weird flavor from it's got to be from the rye. So there you go. I would not recommend you make my recipe for this at any rate. And hey, you know, they can't all be winners. And if we don't experiment and try things, we don't learn what we like and what we don't like and what works and what doesn't work. So at any rate, I did it. It's done. Time to move on. Hey, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you again next week for another video. And until then, keep on brewing.